Okay, so now I'm just going to go into a bit more detail of how we set up those advanced sort of arm controls. So the first thing I'm going to do, extra nodes to hide. It's going to find those two ribbon surfaces and press Shift P to unparent them. And I'm unparenting them because I just want to display them. I don't want to show everything inside this hidden group. I could just turn the visibility on, but I just want to see these two ribbons. And because the origin of the group is the same as the grid, we're not going to get any offsets by unparenting it, and there's no constraints with this group. It's just a hidden group, so it's not going to have any problems unparenting these and reparenting them. I wouldn't recommend that for other parts of the rig. If you don't want it to work on this curve, you won't want to unparent that, because that's got like rotate offset groups with values, different groups with constraints in there, so we don't want to mess with them. Okay, so I've duplicated them out. I've moved them out, and all I'm going to do now is hit Control D to duplicate that, and I'm going to unlock the translates and just move them below the grid. And what I'm going to do is move them below the grid, and any sort of things we want to create, any extra controls, those sine waves that we had, we're going to apply to nurbs planes, duplicates of those ribbon planes below the grid, and then we're going to hide them later. And any controls that change, like the sine wave, are going to be connected to like the wrist. We might add some custom attributes or some controls on the actual arms themselves. So basically we're going to have some controls up here which actually edit these nurbs planes below the grid, but they're just going to be hidden. That's going to work behind the scenes. I'm just going to create another duplicate and move that down. Okay, and selecting these, I'm actually going to just middle mouse click and drag them into the blend shapes, because these are going to be blend shapes. And I'm going to rename these, so rib surface right arm ribbon underscore sine 01, because this is going to be the sine wave, sine 01, and I'm just going to call this joint 01, and same again, joint 01. So what we're going to do is add a sine wave to these top two, so we can get that nice waviness along the lines. The next one down is going to be these joints, so I'm going to move these down, and I'm going to hit Control D again, and I'm going to call these, instead of joints, I'm going to call these twist 01. So we've got the spine, the sine even, the joints. I'll move these down. So I've got the sine, the twists and the joints. Okay, so with all these selected, the main thing we don't want to do at this point is we never want to freeze transformations of blend shapes, because the way that blend shape works is it looks at this, so it looks at each CV on this object, looks at the CV on your original object that we're going to apply it to, and if there's any changes it'll move them. But keeping the translate Y here, Maya knows that this has been moved down, so it's going to negate this value. So essentially these are perfectly the same if we moved it back -33. If we froze this, what it's going to take that as is we've moved every single CV down -33, and then it's going to see that as a difference. So if we put the blend shape on, what would actually happen is the ribbon would snap down to here. So we don't want to, we want to keep the translates in there. We never want to freeze them. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is select these in order, so 1, 2 and 3, and select these in order, yeah, 1, 2 and 3, and then shift select the ribbon surface last. So basically we sim again driver and then select the driven. So these three are drivers, the last one is the driven, and go to create deformer, blend shape, and go to the option box, and I'm just going to give this a name as rib blend left underscore arm underscore 01. So I know that this is the ribbon blend for the left arm 01. And I'll just copy the name so I can paste it when we do the other side. I'm just going to reset the settings here and then just click apply. And then I'll do the same on the other side. Select these three, shift select the last surface. This is going to be right, and apply. And what you can see in here, we now have the skin cluster, which is skin to these arm joints, and we have the blend shape. If we click the blend shape, you can see you've got 3 different blend shapes here. So it basically means it's similar like the constraints. You have a weight value, and basically this means from 0 to 1 we're going to match these down here. So just to test this, what we could do is shift these about and blend into a value of 1. We can see it's going to match the edits we've done below. And the beauty of this is we can actually do all 3. So that way it's going to just add all the values together. So I'm just going to undo that before we move them about. Okay, so now what we can do, go to object mode, and with this selected I'm just going to go to create deformers, nonlinear. I'll tear this menu off by going to create deformers, nonlinear, and just this little bar at the top to tear it off. And I'm going to create a sign. I'm going to select the other side and create another sign. Select the next one down, which is the twist, and add a twist. Select the next one and add another twist. And actually what I'm going to do is delete this sign here and create a wave. And see if we can try see the difference. And it creates this handle, so you can see this line, and it's going to scale it to match the sort of overall scale of this. So I'm just going to rotate this negative 90 degrees so I can match the length of that arm. And we're just going to see the wave control, get the amplitude. We can get the drop off so at the ends. So for these deformers we don't really want them to snap these end joints really far up, because it's going to take it off that clavicle and it's going to take it off from the hand. So I'm just going to add a bit of drop off so we're only editing the ones in the middle, and then it drops off back to the shoulder. So just messing about with these controls, seeing what we can do. So you can see the wave here. This one is taking it from the middle, so this midpoint, and moving it up and down. So what I'm actually going to do for this, just go back before I created that, and we're just going to use a sign instead. So feel free to use different ones of these if you want. You can choose whichever you like. Things like squash and stretch might not work too well because it's in a line, so you're not going to get much squash and stretch. You might have the nurbs plain, like bulging in the middle, but these follicles are still going to attach to the centre of that, so it's not going to have much of an effect. And we've got the squash and stretch set up anyway with this IK and FK. So I'm just going to add a sign. Okay, so I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees, rotate this negative 90 degrees. I'm going to select both of these. So what we might want to do, so just testing that we can get these to work, give them a drop off of 1. We could, so you can see here this line coming down is where it's going to apply that bend. So if I rotate this 180 degrees, I can get it so on both sides, both these arms, we're getting the same value. So we want to get it to mirror across basically. So on both sides we're getting the same waves, and that just looks really funky. And one thing at this point what I want to do is just select these two up here, go to the blend shapes and set all these to 1. And the same on this side, set all these to 1, just so we can see these working, so we can check that it's working above as well. So this is looking really cool. There's the low and high bound, which is where we want it to end and start, but because it's, so you can see it changing that, it's increasing this line, but because it's already starting and ending on the start and end of this nurbs plane, it's okay to keep these at -1 and 1. Drop off as 1. Okay, so that's working quite well. You can see it working above, and that just looks hypnotic. Okay, so I'll reset these. I think the wavelength was set to 1. Oh, we'll set the wavelength up, because setting the wavelength lower doesn't like to work really. So I'll just reset all these. Okay, so the next one down, we added the twist. So I'm going to do the same. Rotate these into place. Select them. Select both of these. So if we can't select them, we can select them in here. And what I'm going to do is get it so that twist. So I'll select this handle actually and rotate it to -90. So we get that twist starting so we can get it starting from the start again. And we're just experimenting with these at the moment, so the twist might not actually be worth using because you can see it's twisting the end joint really, and that might give us some bad results when we're twisting this wrist. But then again, we could hook up the wrist control to the twist, so as we twist the wrist it actually twists the whole arm like a candy wrapper or something. So I'll leave that in there. So I'm just going to reset these to 0 actually. And then the next one down, what I'm going to do is we're going to create a series of joints on this. So I'm just going to go to the front view. And I'm just going to duplicate these along. Create a few joints in here. Get these sort of in the middle. So what we could actually do is holding down C, I can snap it to the curve. Snap it to the edge of that, and the same on this side. Holding down C to snap it. We could be really super accurate down here. We could get these into position, you know, measuring it, but we don't really need to much. And I'm going to select these joints here. And I'm just going to rename these J STDRV because these are driver joints again. I'm not going to use for skinning the character. It's left underscore arm ribbon blend. I'll rename this joints A. So it's a ribbon blend and it's the joint part of ribbon blend. Rename the next one B. Next one C. D. And E. And renaming these now, we can just select them and go to mirror joints, search for left and right, apply. And it's doing that because these are not part of the same chain. So it's, when we're mirroring joints, it's looking for one hierarchy, and we've got that error. So just by selecting them one by one, and we'll just mirror them over one by one. Okay, so we've got the left and we've got the right. So now what I'm going to do is select these joints, select the nurbs plane, and just go to skin, bind skin, smooth bind, selected joints, so I'll just keep the defaults on. Same on this side, select these joints and hit G to repeat last command. So now what's going to happen is as I move these joints here, and that's it, I'm just going to undo that because the fall off that's quite large, so I'm going to go to skin, smooth bind. I'll put the max influence to 3, so we've only got 3 in certain areas, and I'm going to put the drop off rate really low to 1. Hit apply, let's see what that's like. It's moving the entire thing again. So I'll just quickly do this actually. Hit apply, and if we want to edit the skins of these, I'm just going to bring up the skin, edit smooth skin, paint skin weights tool, bring up the options for this, and we can go in and start painting these. So I'll start from A. So what I'd actually like to do is take the E, the last one, take a value of 1 and flood it, and that way we're not going to get any problems if none of these CVs have a value of 0, because that last one's always got a value of 1. And then once we've done these joints, we can edit the last one. So I'll start with A, flood it with a value of 0, and do the same for B, C and D. And we're not getting any snapping because the last one has 1 over everything. Now we can just go in and start painting these. So value of 1, I'm going to paint that in there, and holding shift to smooth it. Go to the next one, and I'm using the brush with a nice fall off, so it's smoothing itself quite well. Go to C, go to D, and then E will remove influence. So removing all the influence down here. Holding control again inverts the operation, so we're replacing with 1, holding control replaces with 0. And we can see how that's working there. It's quite. Select this joint. We can see now how that works. So these are just like individual controls that we can choose to sort of get a custom shape in there. And then we can see how that's going to apply to the top. And we can also take the scale of this and then start scaling these in and out, and you can see how that's going to affect the rig. And this is still all working with the arm, and if we see anything like this, we're going to be thinking, wow, we've screwed up big style. But all we need to do is we select the curve, right click, go to inputs, all inputs, and we need to make sure that the blend shape is below. Okay, so I'm going to end the lesson here, and next lesson I'll explain a bit more why.